Hi, Robin. How are you today? Can you
Good.
hear
How
me
are
okay?
you?
Oh, I'm
Yes.
good. Awesome. All right. So, I was wondering if you had anything specific that you wanted to focus on today. I know that recently we worked quite a bit on the final D's and T's. I was wondering how that's feeling.
It's feeling better, but there's still phrases, and I forgot to write one of these down.
Oh, okay.
Um, but also, Vandy, just like thinking through it, just getting a sense that I'm plateauing.
Oh, okay.
Uh, and so I was just wondering, like, uh, what's the harder work to do? Is it like
Yeah.
some kind of practice every day because I have my, commute.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I think
but
practicing would be great. Um, at this point too, we've worked so much on the diction and we had talked a little bit on about delivery. So I think that at this point it would be really great for us to work on longer passages, like maybe having you do a longer poem or transcript of something, or we work on a specific speech. So we could take something small, like you could do just a few minute long speech where you share a quote that inspires you, and then you talk a little bit about why that quote is meaningful to you and what it means to you and how it's impacted your life. And it's just a short little speech that you practice. And then, we fine tune that. And then we work on a little bit longer one. Maybe this one's 5 to 10 minutes long, and you share a story that's something that's happened to you in life. And, what you learned from that story, what your takeaway was from that story. Um, so, working a little bit more on conversational speech and also expressiveness and delivery in the context of a longer passage or a longer stretch, doing something that you might use at work, a presentation you might give there, or if you want to work more on conversational English, we could do that. One of my students, he feels really confident with his professional language, but when he gets into situations where it's more social, he has a lot of trouble understanding and responding to more casual, relaxed, friendly conversation. So we practice quite a bit of casual conversation, and then I'll give him suggestions as we go. We'll rephrase things. We'll go through it where he stresses different words. Um, and then he also will bring specific phrases that he says, "This was confusing to me. Let's go over that." And he'll save things from a podcast or a movie he watched or something that he saw on a sign when he was traveling for work. And that seems to be helpful to him. But then I have other students who maybe work on a presentation they have to give for work, or if they're a teacher, maybe a lecture that they might give. So, what do you feel like is your ultimate goal for the ways that you want to be able to use this?
I do think, I mean, while it's important to sort of carry this through to social aspects as well,
Hmm.
my life kind of just centers around work in general.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. I feel like I'm always working, even if I'm in a social setting.
Yeah.
Um, so it really is just being as professional and tightened up, no matter what the
Yeah.
situation is.
Absolutely. Yes. So for you then, it probably is going to be more helpful to work on this considering the professional situations that you'll be in. Do you tend to have places where you need to give a presentation or a speech
All the time.
all the
Uh,
time? Okay.
like almost for like 10, 15 years now.
Right. So that's something that you're doing regularly. And I know that we've talked about wanting to be able to communicate clearly while being fast. It sounds like you're in a world where speaking quickly is very important, where it's just a fast pace in general. So, when you're giving a speech, do you feel like you're trying to cram a lot into a short time, or is it more just the culture is more fast paced?
I think it's more personality. Like,
Sure.
I can break down complex concepts
Yes.
into simpler, easy to digest pieces.
Great.
But I know I'm doing it while compromising on
Hmm.
like the clarity, or everyone who's worked with me for a while absolutely understands me.
Right.
But it's like I really want that polished tone and talk and
Hmm.
um
Right. And if you are with people who maybe don't know you as well or haven't worked with you as much, they might then have a little bit of a harder time understanding. Is that what you're finding?
right. So just imagine like in a 10-minute conversation, I
Hmm.
would have at least one instance where they would they wouldn't ask necessarily, but they would be like, "Oh, you meant, you know."
XYZ, yeah, that they're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
clarifying and making sure that they heard you correctly.
Right.
Right. Hmm. Yeah. And so then you're feeling as though you didn't communicate well in that moment.
Right. Plus, I don't want the stigma of not having been 100% integrated into the culture, you know?
Right. Right. Absolutely. You want everyone to feel comfortable with you and feel that they can understand and communicate with you well. 100%. Yes. So, would it be helpful to have you maybe do a short speech, even maybe just the beginning or the ending or a certain chunk of a speech that you might have to give in work? And then I could then give you feedback on those and maybe point out specific moments that were less clear.
Yeah, I just don't know how to get started.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that's why I thought that maybe starting with something a little bit shorter could be helpful. So, for instance, my student Michelle, she wasn't sure again how to get started, like you said. So, I just had her work on her introduction as though she was talking to a group that she hadn't presented for in the past and introducing herself, who she was, breaking the ice, just getting that speech started. So, greeting them, explaining who she was, introducing what she was going to be talking about in that moment. So, just that beginning initial couple moments of this speech, we worked on getting that moment to be really strong and clear and impactful, especially because with her, she felt that it took her a while to warm up into the presentation. So she felt that coming in stronger and having more confidence in the first initial moments would be beneficial for sure. So, do you think that might be helpful to do just that opening moment?
Sure.
Okay. So, it'll be as though you're talking to a group you haven't met in the past, you have not presented to them previously. You'll give basically a greeting, an introduction, and an icebreaker, and then we'll leave off there.
Okay. Can I suggest a change
Sure,
as in
absolutely.
can it be a one-on-one introduction?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Shall I start?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Robin Chaco. I work at Stars and I manage the direct-to-consumer business here. I'm gonna need you to retort back just so it makes it
Absolutely.
easier.
Yes. It's great to meet you, Robin. We're happy to be here.
It's nice to meet you too. So I am here today, just looking over some of these vendor products, and particularly I'm interested in automated solutions that can help reduce the amount of human labor involved in running subscriber operations?
Well, you've definitely come to the right place. We have a fantastic development team, and our head programmer is exceptional at customizing our software to automate whatever your company needs. Why don't we go meet with him and you can explain a little bit more of what would serve your company best? All right, nice. So, a few things that I noticed. One was that you were pausing to think about what you wanted to say next, and you occasionally would insert a word like when you were thinking. Also, I noticed a little bit of lag between chunks that I thought usually would be a connected thought. When you have something that flows from one thought to the next and it really is a connected thought to it, we don't pause as much. We pause more when there is a shift about to happen. There's something new that we're about to say. I feel
Okay.
like you can join together things like your name, your job title, and your company. And then you could maybe pause and put into the next chunk, here's why I'm here today and what I'm interested in. And then you can pause and let them say something, and then you'll go on to the next chunk. So trying to make things flow when they're all part of that same concept or the same flow of thought.
And is the root cause of that basically the lack of organization and thought, or is it something else?
I think it can vary. If you're focused on your diction, that might be a reason that you might slow it down and take pauses. If you are worried about what to say and processing and putting it together, that could also be a reason. If you work on these types of phrases and introductions and things that you say regularly, you should have a few options of different ways you can say the same thing just tucked in your back pocket and you pull it out. For instance, I have a few options of things I say when I don't know an answer. I'll respond with things like, I haven't done enough research into that area at this point to give an educated answer. However, I will reach out to Susan and let you know within the next couple days, right? So it's something that I practice and I say I'll do XYZ. I don't know how to answer, but I will do the research and I'll get back to you later today. Things like that. So having planned, structured ways of saying things that you say often is very helpful. And then it just becomes habit. It rolls off the tongue. So you practice saying a greeting, your name, your job title, and the company you're with. And that just rolls off your tongue. It becomes something that's just second nature and it just flows out easily. You will run into those moments where it's something you maybe haven't said very often, or you get asked a question that you haven't thought about, or you don't quite know the answer. It's okay to pause and consider before you respond in those moments. I would suggest formulating fully what you want to say before you answer. Pausing before you answer would be
And
preferable to
what
pausing in
are
the
you
middle.
formulating? Are you formulating
A
the
response.
groups? Got it.
What I heard you
As in,
doing
try
was
not to just
wanting
start
to
talking
dive
before.
right in.
Right.
Exactly. You were wanting to start as soon as they stop talking. And then you would pause and go, what do I want to say next? In the middle. And it was clear that you were trying to formulate what you were going to say next. It might be a reaction to having people interrupt you sometimes. However, if you're in a situation where they really do want to hear what you have to say, which I would say is a lot of the time in a work situation, they will pause because they do want to hear what you have to say. For
Got
instance, if
it.
they pose a question to you, it's perfectly fine to take a moment, think it over, and then respond.
How
I,
much of a moment, though?
that's fair. I actually have had many people thank me for truly considering their question before I respond. People have many times in my life said, "Oh, I really love that you thought about that before you just gave an answer, that you actually considered the question." I do think that if you're in a world that tends to be faster paced, there might be some people who fill space just because they're someone who talks and fills empty spaces and is uncomfortable with them. But I find that it's a more powerful, impactful effect when you have the strength and the self assurance to be okay with those silent moments and not feel like you have to fill them all the time.
Got it.
Could we try the same thing again? The rules of thumb would
Yes.
be pause before you start to think of what you want to say. Try to have a continuous flow when it's one continuous thought. When you feel the instinct to fill the space with a word like catch yourself and stop and be silent for a moment. Then continue once you know what you want to say. All right, we'll try it again.
Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Robin Chaco. I work with Stars. I manage their direct-to-consumer business. I'm here to sort of look at what automated solutions you might have in order to help me reduce the amount of manual labor that I currently invest in my business. And typically, the solutions that I have been exposed to in the past have neither lived up to its promise, either because it took a lot of time to integrate the solution or because it just wasn't shelf ready.
Hi, Robin. It's wonderful to meet you. I've really been looking forward to having you here today. See, I didn't I got to practice mine too. Hi, Robin. It's great to have you. I've really been looking forward to your visit. We're very excited to show you what we've put together. I have been looking over your company's website and the notes that you sent over. I'd love to take you with me to show you our product and to give you an example of how our software is able to help reduce your labor costs. And also, it's a very quickly implemented system. Our team will do all of the heavy lifting to get it set up and running, and then you just get to enjoy watching it work.
Thank you. I don't have a lot of time. So ideally, what I would like you to go through is where has this solution been implemented in the past? What kind of results has it delivered? And how do I get to talk to someone who has had the experience of doing this with you?
Those are great questions. We have several companies that we have worked with to tailor our software to work with their company's individual needs. And we actually have one of our partner companies with us here today. I'd love to introduce you to him. He runs a company named Metronome out in Portland. And our software has helped him to expand and have less intensive labor involved in the running of his business. Why don't you come with me and I'll introduce you?
Perfect. But just to be transparent, I'm not looking to be pressured into a sale at the moment. I'd really like to understand to make sure that it fits my need perfectly before jumping into more substantial conversations about purchasing or running a team together or something.
That is completely understandable. I completely understand. We are going to send you everything that we have put together after our meeting today so that you can look at it on your own time. And we can set up a meeting later on when you feel that you've had time to look through everything and consider your options.
Perfect. How is that?
All right, wonderful. So I thought that that was much improved from the last conversation. I really liked that once you started a section of what you were saying, you continued through. You continued the thought, even at moments where maybe it felt like you weren't quite sure how to finish what you were saying. There were a couple moments where I felt like just the very end felt less sure of yourself, that you weren't quite sure how to put a button on what you were saying and let the other person respond. But the starts were a lot more confident, and the continuous flow and the connection between this thought, this thought, this thought was much, much better. We also didn't have awkward pauses in the middle of the flow. And we also didn't have those little filler sounds that we do. Well, right. We didn't have any of those in there. So that was excellent. The next step, I would say, is finishing the thought with a really strong button. You could do something like ask a very clear question to the other person. You could do something like say a very decisive, concrete statement. For instance, when you said that you were not looking to purchase anything today, that was a very strong statement. Even if you had already said something like that, you could rephrase it and then finish that section with a similar statement, something like, to reiterate, we aren't interested in signing a contract today, but I would love to see what you've got, right? And then it sounds like it's a nice, strong, confident closing to what you said. I thought you did a really nice, strong closing on the first chunk where you introduced yourself, who you are, what company you're with, what you do, what you were interested in. And actually, the first time we went through, those were two different sections where you introduced yourself, paused, waited, did the second part, paused, waited. When you're in person, it will be a lot easier to see with body gestures, facial cues, when the person is done speaking. But I also think, say you're walking down a hallway together towards something and they're looking at where you're going and opening doors through hallways, they're not necessarily looking at you constantly. Then it might be really beneficial in those moments to have a very decisive, concrete closing to what you're saying. Or in a phone conversation, a same situation where that strong closing to your statement signals them to respond. I like to finish with a question or a request. Could you tell me more about XYZ? So that they know that I want them to respond in that moment. So, what would be a couple phrases you could use to cue that person that you're passing the baton? You're saying, here, you can talk now. What would be some good ways that you could signal to them it's their turn to talk?
Either a question so it makes it not so ambiguous,
Right.
or just stating a definitive statement
Hmm.
where it's clear that I've finished,
Right.
and
Yes.
allowing the pause to eventually force them to say something.
Hmm. Right. And a lot of times, people feel that they need to continue talking because there's a silent moment. You don't necessarily have to keep talking because there's silence. Like you just said, that definitive concrete statement and then a strong pause, a strong empty space signals to them that you were waiting for them to respond. Filling that space is going to make you look weaker in that conversation or more nervous, more agitated, more insecure, unsure of yourself, having that concrete statement and then just letting it land, letting it have space, that is a much stronger, impactful way of dealing with that. Could we try one more time and see
Sure.
if we can end each chunk of what you say with either a clear question or asking them to explain something to you or share something with you? I'd love to know more about your operations, right? Or I'd love to know more about the software. So that is not necessarily a question, but it is making it clear that you would like for them to share with you something. So that's another way that you can pass it on to them without having to ask them a question directly.
How was the diction, Vandy?
I thought that the diction, part of what made each section sound strong was that it started strong and confident and clear diction. And then a couple times at the end of the section, it became less clear or a little bit more muddy. And I think a lot of that was that you were trying to figure out how to end what you were saying, but the diction got a little more blurred at the end where it was a bit less decisive, I would say.
And what is the emotion that it solicits in the listener?
It it makes it feel like you're unsure of what you want to say or what you're trying to ask.
To a point
Uncertainty.
where, to a point where, um, sorry, I'm trying to think this through.
Yeah.
Is it to a point where they feel like their time is being wasted, or not that drastic, just more? I think he's just trying to discover it and he doesn't understand. He doesn't know exactly how to get the point across.
Right. Hmm. It could be either. I think if you went into, let's say, a job interview and we're doing that, the interviewer might think that maybe you didn't quite do all your homework or research the company, that maybe you're not very passionate about this position or working with them. In a situation where you're just meeting someone for the first time, you're looking at possibly putting a contract together with this company or getting to know them, I think it's okay to go in and say, I'm here to see what you can do for us. I want to learn from you. I want you to show me what your company does. I think that's perfectly fine to do, to say, I was really intrigued by the email you sent, and I'm here to learn more. And pointing out, I really appreciated this and this. I'm hoping that you can also help with XYZ, right? Going in with things like that, I think are really helpful, but being open like that, going, I'm here to discover what you do and meet the team and see what the possibilities are. I think that's perfectly fine. If that is what you're feeling and wanting, I would say tell them that. Say, I don't know much about your company, but I am intrigued. I would love to learn more. And that makes you seem confident and sure of yourself and knowing why you're here and what you need from this encounter. It also tells them clearly what you're needing from them.
Understood.
Yeah. So I think really it's just that whole idea of fake it till you make it. Whatever you do, whatever you say, do it with confidence. Even if you stumble over a phrase and say, excuse me, and then you say it again, right? Whatever you do, do it confidently. Don't be embarrassed. Don't go, oh man, beat yourself up about it, right? Don't do that. Whatever you do, own it do it confidently, be friendly, be okay and comfortable with wherever you're at. And that will then cause them to be comfortable as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was
Yeah,
very helpful.
absolutely. I'd love to try just a couple phrases where we practice a conclusion. So let's try a short introduction and give me a really strong conclusion to that.
Hi, my name is Robin Chaco. I work with a television network called Stars, and I manage their direct-to-consumer business. I'm here to check out. Oh,
That's
damn
all right. You
it.
could pause there, actually. You could give them a chance to introduce themselves. So you could say, I'm here for this reason, or you could just say, this is who I am. This is the company I'm with. Let's say I'm the receptionist, right? You're just checking into the building. And I respond with something, you can just finish strong. So, this is who I am. This is the company I work with, and I manage this, the direct to consumer part of our business. And then you pause. It's a clear, concrete statement. And to me, if you introduce yourself, it makes sense that you'd give them a chance to introduce themselves as well. So if you pause there, I'll go, hello, Robin. It's wonderful to meet you. I have you on the schedule to see Mr. Barrington today. I'll let him know you're here. Right. So then that's a nice, clear ending. This is who I am, and this is what I do, and this is why I'm here. Right. And then when you get in to see, Mr. Barrington, you can introduce yourself. Hello, Mr. Barrington. It's wonderful to meet you. I'm Robin Chaco. And then he'll say, Robin, I'm so excited that you're here. Have a seat, right? And so I think it's perfectly okay to pause there. Let them introduce themselves to you. And then you can continue with why you're here today and what you need from them. Yeah?
Perfect.
Yeah. So give me a little bit of a statement where you're going to ask a question of them or specifically ask them for more information or share, I'd love to learn more about this, right? So something that is clearly asking them for more information.
As part of my job, I run subscriber operations for all of Stars, which is really ensuring that we're bringing in customers at an economical price, that we are extracting the most amount of revenue so that our margins are increased, and that the customers are really having a great time on the platform. However, it's difficult to compete at the moment considering the amount of investments our competitors are putting into the business. I'm looking for a solution that perhaps does not require as much labor, but has more automated self-optimizing systems.
Well, Robin, I
Would
think
you
you've
be
come to
able
the
to
right
help?
place. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you could end with would your company be able to help with that? Right? Exactly. So that's a good question. But I also think pausing there would have worked just as well. I thought maybe you were done because you said, here's what I do and here's what we're looking for. Right? So you could just pause there. I thought it was pretty clear that you were communicating what you needed. So even if you didn't say, would you be able to help with that? I thought it was very clear that I then was to respond to that and say, yes, I think we can help with that. Or, well, we have something
And
that
how
might
was
help, but it's a little bit of a different focus, right? So I can tell you if I feel like what we have is helpful or not at that point.
was the diction okay? And did it
Yes.
seem like I was speaking too slow?
No, I did not think it was too slow. The only thing that I noticed that I would adjust there was that you tended to gloss through the periods. The rate at which you did it would be appropriate for something with a comma. But when we have a period, it should be that was a conclusion. Take a breath, and here is the next sentence. I noticed that you dove right into the next sentence right afterwards. And taking a breath is okay. Give yourself a
And
moment because I
what
also am
does that
processing what you say.
and what does that sound like? Can you just give
Sure,
me a break?
absolutely. So you were saying things like, I'm in charge of direct to consumer partnership and making sure that our customers are happy on the platform, that we are attracting new new viewers all of the time. We want to get more subscriptions. I'm looking for solutions on how I can increase subscriptions, increase consumer happiness with our product, and reduce labor intensive parts of the operation, right? So if I say that and I just kind of keep going. So I'm in charge of this. Pause. I'm looking for solutions for XYZ. Pause. I've noticed a reduction in customer satisfaction and that we are losing subscribers. Pause. One of our main issues is that our competitors are doing this. Pause. I'm looking for ways to reduce revenue, reduce labor, and increase this. Pause. That is going
Got
to
it.
allow them a moment to process what you said. There were a couple moments where I was still thinking about what you said, where you just kept going. And I went, oh, okay. And it just felt a little bit
Understood.
like Energizer Bunny to me, where I was like, oh, okay, we're still going. Right.
Okay.
And as the person listening, I would have appreciated just a moment to process what you were saying. That's a very common thing that I run into with public speaking, with doing presentations, with students who are working on those kind of things. And a lot of it, I think, is that we live in a fast paced world and we feel that like way too much coffee feeling of I have to keep going and I have to keep up and everything's flying by all the time and I don't want to waste their time and I don't want to annoy them, right? If you're there meeting with them, they want to hear what you have to say. Also, in this particular scenario, you are looking to hire them, right? They want you as a client. So you are in the more powerful position here. So you can take your time. So I would just say giving it a breath, just a moment to take in a breath before you go on to the next thought. When you did it, it was a little bit more like, hi, I'm Robin Chaco, and this is what I do at this company, and this is what I'm looking for, and we're struggling with this, and da 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 da. And so it felt a little like, oh, and this, and this, and this, and this. And it felt a little like a run-on sentence, even though it wasn't. You weren't actually doing a run-on sentence, but because you just kept diving back in, it felt a little bit like, oh, okay, now we're here. Oh, we're here. Okay, right?
Got it.
Whereas if you
That
just
makes so
take a
much
breath
sense.
between, yeah. It also
And
helps
it's
me to go, oh, that was the conclusion of that thought. Now we're on to another thought. That was one point. Breath. Here's another point. Breath. Here's another point. And then it's organized a little bit better in my brain.
perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Vandy.
absolutely. Wonderful work today.
Thank you. See you
So
on
practice
Thursday.
those things, implement them into your conversations, and then we'll reflect on that and see what we can do to improve it Thursday. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Great work. I'll see you soon. Bye, Robin.
See you soon.